involved satanic ritual. One in particular involved the Kabbalistic tree of life. Now, I want to give you some time to unpack this thing for us, this memory and experience, and what it means.
Okay, you want me to go into a little bit of it now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons I feel like I would like to mention this is because there's a lot of talk these days about the Kabbalah being of God, or mysticism being a higher order, higher thinking, enlightenment. Well, it's satanic. And the all-seeing eye of Horus, it's satanic. It's antichrist. It's anti-God's Christ. And my first memory, I mean, I was taught early on about the eye, like the eye of Horus and Egyptian things, but this tied it into a satanic ritual. It happened at nighttime. I was taken from my home. It was by, I won't tell who it's by, but it's somebody I know, and I was waking up as I was taken to this place, and it was in a basement. At least it started in a basement. When I was waking up, I was in the arms of the person that took me there. That, I'm not sure the people that greeted us knew that I was as awake as I was. They probably didn't expect me to remember it, but I have. Well, I remember the lady that greeted us when we went in. I remember what she looked like. I could even identify her in a photograph if I saw a picture of what she looked like at that time. When we went in, the person that took me there stood me up, and we walked into a room that was a small concrete room, and there was this extremely tall man there that I recognized. I knew him in my real life, except he had this bright, flaming red hair. He started laughing at me, and I started thinking that, first of all, his hair looked different, and I thought that he's probably laughing at me because he thinks that I'm not going to remember, that I know who he is. I'm not going to remember. So I don't remember what happened between that moment and my next memory is I've written about this on my blog, but I want to mention first that the little bit that I wrote about the blog, I mentioned that this person had a black robe on. When I wrote the information for my blog, I was out of state. I was not near my journal that I wrote about the memory. So, of course, I went back to my journal, and I had a drawing of this figure that was in the ceremony. I wrote it as that the person had a white robe. And since then, it's significant that I have found that the white is significant. Either one, dark or white, it's significant. But the importance of this, the importance of that ceremony was it was to teach me about the Kabbalistic tree of life. It was to teach me that the figure itself represented the eye of Horus. The person was dressed in a white robe. His face was all chalked up like gray. Even though I recognized the person was extremely tall, and I have to say that there's only two people in my life that I knew were that tall. I mean, like over 7 feet tall. The whole point of the height was significant. Also, the fact that the figure in the robe was to represent a keyhole, the face being the main opening, the keyhole. That was the entrance to more enlightenment, and there's a lot more significance to it that I'm sure is there that I don't know at the time. But I'm telling you that also in my physical life, I started having a strange interest in antique keys and keyholes. and I would find them. I don't know if this was connected either, but when I think back, it's very strange that I started finding keys buried around one of my relatives' houses. It was like I was drawn to go dig at a certain spot. I pick up a key. I asked if I could keep it. I was told yes, no, yes, you can keep it, whatever. So I was collecting these keys, and I was always trying to figure out what lay behind the doors, the secret doors that somebody, like a little girl like me, why couldn't I know what's behind the doors? I thought for sure I should know. So these rituals, well, this one in particular had other people there, and I was like the center for some reason that they wanted to teach me about that, and I think it was just specifically for me. I don't remember if they did anything else to me at that ritual or not, but it had to do with the Eye of Horus and the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. And these people that were there are the same people that were tied into other parts of my life that had to do with satanic ritual abuse and trauma, that just horrendous stuff. So it isn't just like one memory that has to do with those people.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Can I tell you something?
Good stuff.
Oh, you want to say something about that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. There's something else I wanted to mention that I didn't. For some reason, it keeps coming to my mind, so maybe I should just go ahead and mention it. And it's to illustrate how people wonder how parents can be swayed to do certain things, and they're unaware. They can be swayed by people in the organization to do certain things to their children for the sake of the organization. And people on the outside don't understand how that can happen. Well, I have several examples, but one of them I'd like to mention now is as simple as when I was being taken at night to get, I guess, some type of programming, and I think they're experimenting on me. I haven't talked in depth about this particular thing that they used to do to me. I don't even think I'll go into it right now, but the point here is that they would attach electrodes to my hair, to my head.
Yes.
My hair was a little bit long, very, very thick. Well, my hair was so thick, and it just was a mess by the time the end of the night was over. And it frustrated the two people who were doing this programming, hooking me up, whatever. And I could tell you so much about that. It'll just have to be another time.
So whatever you want to throw out there. What happened was, I remember when I get up in the morning, my hair would be such a mess. It'd be terrible. It's like I would start to remember what it's from, then I forget. Okay, so my mother got a phone call from her mentor at that time, which in a way became my mentor. It's one of the ones that used to write books for the Lucius Trust Publishing Company. Well, she was telling my mother over the phone, talking to my mother about my hair. I could tell that much. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation. I could hear my mother. It all had to do with my hair. And so what happened is she was telling my mother to go get my hair thinned and cut. So my mother took me to get my hair thinned and cut. And the interesting thing is, I think the person that cut my hair, it was a barber, but he looked like the same man that did some of the programming. So I don't know if there's a connection there or not, but the point was that my mother was told by someone else to get my hair cut and thinned. And I hated it. Oh, I hated it so much. But see, that's another thing. I'll never forget why my hair was cut. So did my mother know why? No, she didn't know. She did. I totally believe she did not know I was being taken at night. But she did respond like so many other victims, people like me who've come out to tell their stories. I tried to tell her when I was a little kid. I tried to tell my other relatives. Oh. They would get that blank stare on their face. They would say, "Oh, you're just imagining it." Oh my gosh.
That's what she would tell me. So, yeah, we weren't imagining. Can I talk about something else? Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, another thing I wanted to mention was about the guilt. Since we're back on this age, when we're experiencing, when we okay, when we have these experiences, a part of us will shut down. We don't want to remember. We don't remember it because it's too traumatic. Another thing is when you go through this programming, they don't want you to remember it. So they do things to you to prevent you from remembering. Sometimes it's shock. Sometimes it's drowning. They'll do something. They'll kill you, bring you back. But the point is regardless, when the memory fully surfaces, like I remember in my entire life, I've remembered certain things that were never forgotten. But what I'm saying is when the whole memory comes back, a lot of guilt can happen. I mean, if you're not killed in your own emotions and mind, having to work through trying to process what you did or what was done to you, I mean, you're trying to process it through a child brain of what happened to the child at that time. It's overwhelming. And then the guilt hits in. Oh my gosh, what did I do? So then how do you deal with that? Well, if you don't have anybody to help you, it can be a real problem. So I'm thankful that I've had God to help me guide me through it, and I've had a few people to help me also. But one of the things that I had guilt about, even recently, had to do with, and it's an experience that I wrote about. I don't even know if I mentioned this I wrote about something for Henry Mackal. It was about an underground base. Well, in that base, there were children in cages, and these were the cages these are like old, the kind of cages you put animals in back in the 50s, 1950s, 60s. They were just really thick iron cages. There were children in cages. I can remember, especially this one boy, blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy. He used to look at me every night, and look, just the pleading in his eyes. It's like he wanted me to tell people, please. It was like he was, please tell people I'm here, please. So I would vow to myself I was going to remember that this boy was there. I was going to try to get him free, even though I was told that they would kill my family, they would kill me, whatever, if I told anything. But I vowed that I was going to remember. Well, I couldn't remember. It would haunt me. I'd get flashes in my mind sometimes of him, and then it would just disappear. But I couldn't remember and connect to what it was about. And when it happened, it's just like, oh my God, what happened to that boy? I mean, he's probably dead. It's the guilt. I had to deal with that little girl's guilt that she didn't tell. Well, it wasn't her fault. It really wasn't her fault. And I've just had to, it's not a piece of cake when we experience it the first time. It's not a piece of cake when we have to relive it. And then you have to move through all the processing of it. And then the guilt. And guilt is a killer. And then if there's any programming involved, suicidal programming could kick in. You have to fight that. So it really does take the power of God to touch a person on the inside and heal them. And I'm telling people, He can do that. God can do that. He can take the broken people. He can put us back together. He can heal us, and He can make us better than what Satan's even told us that we can be, even better than Satan's Nephilim or the people who are genetically enhanced. I mean, I've had to deal with thinking about myself as being genetically enhanced and thinking that Satan actually made me better. Well, he didn't.
On that note,